This is the Patriot Dale Wilkes coming to you from Columbia, South Carolina, in the United States of America, and you're watching Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Palmer.
Welcome to episode 52 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and my guest today is none other than Joel Redman, and you would have remembered him as Oliver Gray in NXT. Joel was an inaugural NXT Tag-Team Champion with Neville, Pac as we know him today, so I got to speak to him about that at length and his experiences in NXT, the good and the bad of it, the pressure, but it was a lot of good as well, so you get a good balanced argument about his time there. Joel's been on the UK scene for many years, doing the camps with All Star and the Brian Dixon. He's been booked many times for that and has quite the work schedule. In 2019 he finally made it to All Japan Pro Wrestling, and he had bookings going into this year, pre-COVID, so we'd get to talk about that too. So without further ado, this is episode 52 with Joel Redman, aka Oliver Gray when he was in WWE. Enjoy. Right, it's my honour and privilege to have on Stu's Wrestling Podcast today Mr. Joel Redman, and you would also have known him in WWE, in NXT specifically, as Oliver Gray. How's it going, Joel?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, pretty good. Nice to be back in the gym properly and training and stuff. So, yeah, all good.
Cool. How's lockdown been for you generally?
It's been okay. I mean, I work in a gym normally, so I just took some kit into the shed and did some home workouts. It's allowed me to spend some more time with my fiance and things, which has been really nice, and to sort of be a bit more normal for a while before the manic schedule resumed at some point. And yes, it's been good. It's been good to rest the body a bit as well.
Cool. That's cool, man. Right, I'm going to get into, when did you first start watching pro wrestling?
So my first pro wrestling, I didn't watch it as a kid on TV. I lived on a very remote farm in Devon, so we didn't have any Sky TV, and the TV signal was terrible. And I was always outside. I'm a farm boy, so I was out in the woods building little forts or, messing around with my dad on the farm. So I never watched any wrestling. My friends were wrestling fans at school, and they dragged me along to a show in Exeter, the Wrestling Alliance from Scott Conway shows. So my first experience was watching it live. And I remember Chad Collier being there. I had a signed picture from Chad Collier. And I remember seeing James Mason on the show. And that was my first introduction to professional wrestling. And I'd done judo as a kid, so I'd already done a lot of grappling. So I was interested in that kind of stuff anyway. But, even with James, even now, to this day, still captivates me with his performances. And I'm sure at a young age, I just watched James and thought, this is what I want to do. And then from there, I started watching American wrestling.
Who did you gravitate to, Joel? Which guys stood out for you once you got into it, watching it?
Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit was just, for me, was just the best. Obviously, it's tarnished by what happens later in his life. But from a young age, just for me, watching him, I think maybe that's from the judo background, because I'd come from a legit sort of grappling form. Someone like Benoit and Guerrero, Malenko and Finley, Regal, these kind of wrestlers to me, it looked real. I couldn't tell it wasn't real. Some of them were wrestlers, you could just sort of tell it was a bit pantomime. But with those guys, it was like, this is real. Or Kurt Angle as well, big Kurt Angle fan. I started watching wrestling.
Which guys did you watch you felt maybe could have been propelled higher at the card, but maybe didn't get there when you were watching around that time? Yeah,
well, Dean Malenko, I think, would be a great example. Maybe he lacked the personality, but then maybe he didn't. His character was the Iceman, and that was his gimmick. Like, just because it wasn't loud and he didn't raise his eyebrow doesn't mean he wasn't charismatic. And technically, he's just unreal. Watching some of his matches in WCW with Benoit and just incredible stuff that he could do. So him, maybe. Who else? Sort of put on the spot there. Any of those sort of wrestlers. I mean, even people like Finley, I think Finley could have been a world champion. Same with Regal. I think Regal could be a world champion. They never were, But I don't know.
Just to progress onto that, did any events on the calendar stick out for you?
In terms of American wrestling?
Yeah, and maybe even if you want to go a bit broader, European, UK.
I mean, as a kid, I only sort of watched American wrestling, so I guess things like Benoit winning the belt or winning the Rumble obviously would have stood out to me, being a fan of his. yeah, that kind of stuff. I think one of my first shows I ever watched was the Rumble, Triple H, Cactus Jack. I think that was one of the first matches. So that, that's on the hardcore match they did at the Rumble in 2000. So that was obviously stood out, I guess. So I remember that.
That's cool. That's cool. Right, going to scoot forward a bit more now. When did training begin for you?
I think I was 15 or something, and I heard about a school opening up in Exeter. I mean, we were already sort of backyarding in my friend's hay barn or some hay bales and messing around on mattresses. And then I heard about a professional school opening up, and then the guy pulled out last minute. So I was 15. I contacted the company and said, can I sort of manage the school, I guess? And I sort of brought down wrestlers to train us. So I brought down Phil Powers, Randy Simmons, and these kind of guys would come down and help train us in Exeter and teach us how to wrestle. And that's where I met Phil Powers, where I went away on the holiday camp circuit when I was 16. Not wrestling, just putting the ring up, and I'd referee the matches or carry the bags around and stuff and just learn little bits from them before the shows. And then I started training with a UK kid who was trained by Shawn Michaels, and we trained in Portsmouth for a while, and then Mark Sloan, and I've always had different trainers, but it's just, I never went to one school. I didn't go to a school and learn from somebody. I kind of had lots of different people inputting advice, which I think it's actually turned out really well, because there's loads of different styles that I was able to be molded by at an early age.
That's cool, man. That's cool. It's cool that you were like doing little bits and pieces, alongside the training. When was your first match then?
I think it was 15 years ago in January, or 16 years ago, and that was in Exeter, against a guy called Sammy Ray, who had a mask on, Professor Aikida. And I was a really out of shape kid. I was a real fat kid, and like a red top with a belly hanging out, and doesn't look good at all. And the match was dreadful, but you got to start somewhere, and I was way not ready to be doing shows at that time, but yeah, it was good.
Which promotions were you working for? Obviously, it was obviously UK based at that point. Which places were you bouncing around, learning the craft? Sorry,
that company was Revolution British Wrestling, who aren't around anymore. They were a London-based company, so for them a little bit. And then on the holiday camp circuit, which was Haven Holidays at the time, which Phil Powers ran, the sort of southern team for Haven Holidays. So I used to do a lot of those shows at an early age to learn. He took me to a few all-star shows maybe a year later. So I started meeting Brian. I wasn't full-time then with All-Star. That's only been the last 6 years. But I went there and just did a few jobs for them. And, I realised I was out of my depth, because they're the best shows around. So you go there and you realise how good those guys are. And then the UK kid had a company called Varsity Pro Wrestling, so BPW. So I wrestled there, and then eventually went on to FWA Academy, and that's when it all sort of started to skyrocket, I guess, and moving into different IPWs and FWA when it restarted and all that kind of stuff, and got a bit more of an internet presence then.
Who was in FWA with you when you were training at the time? Which guys were in and around with you at that point?
Well, this would have been sort of just after the James Ties and the Birchalls. It was sort of the next class. So, obviously Mark Haskins was there, which is where we sort of first met each other. There were people that were there at the time. I'm sure there's probably a lot of really good ones, but I can't remember. People like Pat was around at the FWA Academy then doing shows. He'd come down and do the shows with us. He was sort of fairly new at the time. I can't really think of anybody else. I don't know who else went on to big careers from that group. Ollie Burns would have been there at the same time. Priscilla, he would have been wrestling with us. That's all I can think of, really.
Did any matches stand out for you through that time frame? Was there any matches you can remember?
Not from those early days. Nothing stands out particularly. Some matches when I started training with Mark. So I did the FWA Academy. Again, I was way out. I shouldn't have been wrestling. I wasn't really good enough. But I think Mark saw like a work ethic in me. Even though I wasn't the best wrestler, he knew I was a hard worker. And he saw something in me. And when he closed the academy, he started the Super 8 training. And he brought me in then. He picked 8 wrestlers that he wanted to train full time. And me and Haskins were 2 of those guys. So we moved in together into a flat and started training with Mark. And that's when I started working for John Fremantle, Premier Promotions, and down in Worthing. And I sort of really credit John for making me the wrestler I am, because the matches he gave me there were like Danny Boy Collins, Johnny Kidd, Robbie Brookside, James Mason, Doug Williams, Mal Sanders, Steve Gray. You can name them. It was just the who's who of British wrestlers. And I was in there as a teenager just getting schooled by these guys and getting ragged around. But there'd be little bits that I'd pick up each time. And if it wasn't for him, I never would have learned some of the stuff that I know. It was being out of your depth and sink or swim. So those matches really stand out to me.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Right, I want to fast forward a bit more again. How did the contact with WWE begin? Obviously, who got in touch with you?
So it was like a big group training thing we were doing up in Nottingham once. And Drew McDonald was there. Drew McDonald just said to me that they'd heard about me, they'd seen some footage of me, and they were really keen to have a look at me and would I go along to a tryout. So I filled in a form online, went to a tryout in Manchester. I didn't perform very well, wasn't good enough, but I guess they saw something there and they said, come back to London next time and we'll look at you again. And then in London, just it sort of clicked, it was just sort of tag in, tag out, just wrestle, and then wanted to see intensity. And at the time I was sort of trying to work on that anyway, and it clicked and they offered me a contract.
How was it with Dusty? And I'm forwarding a bit more again. How was it being, under the learning tree with Dusty Rhodes and William Regal when you were there, when you were over in the US?
It's amazing. Like I said to you before, I'm a pure wrestling fan. So, Dusty Rhodes, brilliant promo, and no one can teach you promos better than Dusty Rhodes. And just being around him, whilst he was still alive is something I really treasure. I've only got a couple of pictures of me wrestling in the house, but there is one of me and Pac and Dusty Rhodes in the ring with the tag belts, and that was obviously will always be quite a good memory of mine. I was trained for the first 6 months by Ricky Steamboat, and that was probably even cooler, really, because obviously I watch a lot of his work with Flair and people, and to be around him. And I'm normally a blue eye wrestler, and I'm a babyface normally, so there isn't really any better babyface than Ricky Steamboat. So to have him teach you some of the little tips that he wanted to pass on to us was really cool.
Oh, but it was amazing.
It's a bit surreal, It's surreal.
Yeah.
You kind of get used to it when you're there, but when you actually think about it is surreal. Some of the people that were training us. The Undertaker came down for a week and trained us. And Triple H would be in training us. And Hulk Hogan was training us for a bit. It's crazy to think, but at the time you're just in the system. You're just trying to work to make it onto the road, and you can't take it for granted almost. But it was really good.
Who else was in there training with you at the same point in the early days of it?
When I first moved, it was FCW, so I was in Tampa. So Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Bray Wyatt, and all those guys, I guess, that are on top now would have been there. And then in Orlando, me and Braun Strowman were very good friends for a long time. He would have been there at the same time. And tons of guys, the FTR, Scott Dawson was there, all these sort of guys were training with me at the time.
Could you have seen... Sorry, I jumped in then, man. Carry on, bud.
Well, it's good to see how well they've done. It's good to see how well everyone's moved on. It's brilliant.
It's a revolving door, in it. Like, no sooner has someone gone up to the main roster, you've got the next wave of talent coming through, haven't you? It's crazy. It's crazy how good everyone is. Crazy. Could you have foreseen how well Rollins, Reigns, Bray, Strowman were going to do back then? Could you tell a mile off?
Maybe not Strowman. He was a huge, big guy, so you knew that he was going to be something, but he wasn't a natural wrestler. He did work incredibly hard and he picked it up really well. He's done great for himself, but you couldn't see to start with. Whereas people like Seth Rollins, you knew that they saw something in him because they wanted to do something with him. And Roman Reigns just got a presence. It's a bit like Triple H. Triple H walked into the room. You haven't got to see him to know he's there. It's like a presence that he gives off. I did a Access at the Royal Rumble in Arizona, and me and Pac were in the bleachers somewhere, or in the stand, and you just knew someone was in the room, and you looked down and The Rock had walked out the entranceway, but you just sort of has this presence. Even a whole arena, you can just tell there's somebody very special in the room. And Roman Reigns have been the same. And then Bray Wyatt's promos were just, you couldn't match them. And anyone that can captivate you like that with a promo is going to make some good money.
He's incredible. I'm not. I tell you what, just to segue into him, I prefer the old Bray character as opposed to the Fiend. I'm not. I got shot down online last week. A load of Americans. I just prefer the original Bray, the promos and stuff like that. But
yeah, me too. That's what I saw him develop whilst we were there, and it was just quite cool to see someone develop into that character. Because when I went there originally, he was a completely different character, and then he sort of came up with this idea, and it just took off. It was brilliant, you know, really good.
How long was it from training at FCW to the first match? What was the time frame for you over there?
5 days.
Wow.
I think. Yeah, it was really quick. Me and Martin Stone went out there, and we had obviously wrestled for a long time in England, and they put us in beginners class, and they just realised that we had a bit more of a grasp on it, and moved us up into a bit more of an advanced class, and then we were put on the sort of live events that weekend, which I think it rubbed people up the wrong way a little bit that were there, but it's dog eat dog of it in that place, and there was a few people that probably gave us a bit of a cold shoulder, and I think I tried to scurf me a bit in the ring and things, but I've been scurfed by people from 16 years old. I'm used to that, and I know what to do when it happens, so it was okay. But
jealousy's commonplace in all walks of life, isn't it? That's just
especially in wrestling. Wrestling is you get quite they deal with it the bad way normally.
That's cool, man. You started off, I remember quite fondly actually, because it was only like 2012. You started off as a singles competitor. How was that, doing singles initially for NXT and for the WWE?
Yeah, it was good. The matches I was in were just was a jobber. I'll go in there and get squashed by people. And I remember a lot of Marston or some of the boys would be thinking it was a bad thing, and telling me, "Oh, this is a really bad thing that they see you as this jobber character." But I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as TV time, like if they're putting me on TV and they're putting me on with these guys that they're trying to make into stars. And if they think that me being in there, that I can sell well enough and I can take their stuff well enough to make them get over, that's only a positive. I just see everything as a positive. And if you're on TV, that's a good thing. The worst thing you could have been at NXT was sitting in the back watching on the screen. You want to be in there having your face on the screen, because they might just see something in you and think, "Oh no, we're going to use this guy properly."
Did you enjoy doing the matches at Full Sail? Obviously, it's quite, it's a couple of hundred people. How was the atmosphere? Being a wrestler, we see it through the TV screen, but how was it from your focal and standpoint?
Yeah, well, do you enjoy it? It's just pressure, Like there's so much pressure because it is WWE, and there is a lot of people watching that footage, and it's on Sky Sports and stuff at the time. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on me, and I think you do enjoy it. Maybe afterwards you enjoy it in a way, but I don't know if you enjoy it when you're in the ring, because in your head you just think, "I don't want to get this wrong. I want this to look good. I want to do well," and that pressure can be quite hard at times.
Then obviously you began tagging with Neville Pack. Who came to you to say you were going to be a tag team? How was that all set up?
So the tournament was meant to have the Ascension in the tournament. So Bram or Kenneth Cameron, I think at the time, and Connor. And then Bram got released from his contract, so they needed another team. So they just sort of threw us together last minute. But they wanted to use Neville. They wanted to make him a big star. And we were just thrown together, last minute thing, put in the tournament, and it just clicked. It just worked well. I think we complement each other. We're very different styles of wrestlers, and that fitted quite well as a tag team. And we were meant to go out first round, I think, and things just started changing. And before you knew it, we had the belts.
It's a hell of a run of matches that as well, wasn't it? That you had. You look at the other guys you're in there with. I remember it was 3MB, wasn't it? And obviously the Wyatts. That's hell of a crop of teams in there for you guys to go on and win it. It was. I bet it was amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy, and at the time, physically, I was in the peak of my fitness, and so was Neville. We were killing it, and even on the house shows, we were the top boys really, because our conditioning was right up there. But then obviously I wrestled Bray Wyatt on a house show and just tore my ACL and ripped my knee to pieces, and that was the end of it, which was a shame, because we were, I had a phone call from the office there saying we're bringing you up to Raw, and what size tracksuit are you and stuff, and you just sort of think this is happening now. We're going to go up, and I was a couple of weeks away and just blew my knee out. and I was out for 9 months. But it is what it is. You can't change that, you know.
I was going to ask how long you were actually out for, but how was rehabilitation of it, Joel? How was that?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, there's no better place to do it. They flew me off to the best surgeon in America and had the knee done, the most expensive way you could have your knee fixed, and then they rehab me every day for 9 months. So my knee's perfect now. I had a bit of a problem with the other knee in Japan last year, but other than that, my knee I tore has been perfect. You couldn't tear it in any better situation. If I'd done it in England, it'd be a nightmare waiting for the NHS to fix it and then paying for my own rehab. So, in a way, it's the best place to do that. But it was the worst time. I couldn't have picked the worst time to get injured.
You came back, didn't you, for a short time? How long were you back with them for up until the release? Yeah, just looking at that time frame.
I think we won the tag belts. I've probably been there about 7 or 8 months. So then it was another 9 months. Yeah, I was probably back for another 9 months maybe after my injury. And then I had the first ball sale. They put me back in, and I went over one of the French boys quite quick. And for some reason, that footage was never aired. And then I don't know, things just went downhill from there. I hurt my back a little bit doing a match, and I don't know what happened, but it just sort of tumbled down, and they ended up releasing me.
It's that age-old question that we all ponder. Is wrestling fixed? This is Bill Apter, and my answer to that is I didn't know it was broken. So many of you know me from my days back at the classic wrestling magazines, and a lot of you from OneWrestling.com and OneWrestlingVideo.com. But I always get questions about various things I did through the years to propel my career to where it is today as the world's most recognizable journalist in pro wrestling. What was my relationship with the McMahons? Was I the guy who started that feud between the actor, comedian Andy Kaufman and Jerry the King Lawler? What is Ric Flair really like? Who are my favorites? Well, all this and more answered in my book that you can get online or at your favorite book dealer called Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broken. It's a great read, got great views, and hopefully you'll be picking it up soon too. So the answer to Is Wrestling Fixed? You know it now. I Didn't Know It Was Broken. This is Bill Apter, and I'll see you at the matches.
GTG, often imitated but never duplicated. Kind of broad at the shoulder, narrow at the hip. No other promotion give us any lip. We the best of the best, the beasts of the East. SOS, simply out of sight. GTG.
What he said, good times guaranteed.
So obviously, upon leaving the States, where were you getting booked when you came back over to the UK, Europe, further afield?
Yeah,
where were your bookings?
I came back and obviously went back to Revolution Pro. Did a lot of work for them for a while. As soon as I got back, Brian Dixon gave me a call and just said, we'd like to get you into All Star, doing the Butlins run, and we discussed the wage. And I'd always, as a kid, because I'd gone to those shows, so I wrestled on those shows at a young age, I'd always sort of really aspired to work for All Star. That was a big thing of mine. I really want to work for that company full time. So I went there 6 years ago, and I've stayed there for the last 6 years, and it's just been the best. Like I've said to lots of podcasts, I come back from America and you kind of think you know it all. You've been trained by these, what we perceive as these legends because they were on TV. And I went into All Star and I just realised I didn't know anything. When I was around Dino and James and Spitfire and Robbie Dynamite, just like, actually, I don't know a thing. And these guys are just incredible wrestlers. So just learning from them and improving my stuff.
Everyone says about the British style, don't they? Obviously, I've never wrestled, but fan perspective, it's highly regarded, isn't it? The British style, especially abroad, especially.
Massively. I would never have, like say Japan or stuff like that. I'd never be there unless I did the British style. They don't. When I go to Japan, they don't want me to do anything else. They don't want me to go off the top with a moonsault. Then they'll tell me not to. And I said, this is not. If we want that, we'll get somebody else. If we want a Japanese style, we'll just get a Japanese wrestler. You're here to do a European style. That's why we're flying you out here, and put you in the nice hotels, because we want you to do this European sort of catch style. And the same in America. I went to America on the back of technical wrestling. It was tag in, tag out, just do technical wrestling in the ring. It wasn't off any flashy moves or crazy gimmicks. It was just, I knew how to wrestle people. And that's why they gave me a contract in America. So, I mean, it's sort of lost a bit in this country. And I think we are getting a bit more, too much into the gymnastic stuff, which is great. You know, I'm not knocking that at all. But
No.
you have to have that fundamental, really good mat wrestling style. And that's what we're famous for in this country. And we shouldn't forget about it.
What would be your tips, Joel, for guys that want to start training and get into business? What would be your tips? You know, you're well travelled within the industry, so yeah, it'd be cool to hear your thoughts. What these kids and young guys and gals want to do. If you know, what should they do in your mind?
Make connections. It's all about connections, like any business, whether that's wrestling or anything in life. It's about making those connections with people, networking. And becoming their friends. Because if you're friends with people, they'll look after you and they'll look out for you and they'll get you work. And just getting on shows, and especially in this country, whilst we've still got obviously not this year because of coronavirus, but when the holiday camp circuit is there, you have to get on this holiday camp. You really can't not get on them because they, you know, in North Wales, you do 10 shows a week. You do 6 weeks of 10 shows, 60 shows in 6 weeks. You have to improve. The only way to improve in wrestling is to do it, is repetitions. It's like the gym, you know, you can't go in the gym for a day and then come out with a good body. It takes years and years and years of the same thing, practicing the same thing. It's the same thing with wrestling. It's just doing it again and again and again until it's second nature. So you can't replicate that, but you just need to get on the shows.
That's cool, man. That's cool. When I was doing my research, I didn't realise you'd been to all Japan. You've been out in Japan, man. How was that? The culture, you know, wrestling the guys over there, just to maybe extend on the Japanese experiences you've had.
Yeah, so that was last year. I started working from last April. Did 5 tours last year. It's the best, you know. I couldn't imagine anywhere better to wrestle. I'd happily just wrestle there for the rest of my career. I wouldn't worry about going back to America or anything. It's just absolutely brilliant. It's my style, you know. You can't talk much for the match because I don't speak English, a lot of them. So it's just get in there and just go for it, just wrestle each other. And that's just perfect for me. There's not an emphasis on the characters or the promos, which I'm terrible at. So it's good to be able to just do what I can do, which is just to wrestle people. And it's an amazing country, the culture, the food, the people, they're so helpful. And they're so good to you when you're there. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Who have you got in there with, and who have you enjoyed getting in there with? That was going to be my next one.
I like wrestling some of the younger guys. There's a guy called Namora. We click really well. He's got a good rugby background, and I played rugby a long, long time. So I mean, the two of us just mix. You know, we really, really fit together. A guy called Ayagi. He's another young boy. He'll be a big name. He's a very, very good wrestler. Then Miyahara, who was the champion up until recently. Again, we get good stuff in the ring when we get in there. Suwama, a good match with Suwama. A lot of these Japanese guys have got amateur wrestling backgrounds, so they all come from amateur wrestling anyway. So they know how to wrestle. So I just find it really easy to work with them. You know, they just know how to move properly, and it's very, very easy. And they're just such hard workers. The cardio on those guys is insane. You know, they'll blow you up straight away. But you've got someone in there. You've not got to worry about them keeping up with you. It's more the other way around. So yeah, it's really good. It's
a totally different crowd over there, isn't it? The more,
yeah, but it's
more observant, aren't they? They're not as like, you know, you come to the UK, we're like a pack of rabid animals, aren't we? But I've always noticed with the Japanese crowd, their attention's on it. It's totally different, I'm sure, for you wrestling in front of them guys.
Yeah, it's good, you know. Like it's like a Japanese crowd still view the wrestlers as these superstars, right? And there's not really a lot of interaction between the fans and the wrestlers. You know, you can go out and sell your merchandise at the table, but it's, you know, say you lose the match in All Japan, they won't let you sell your merchandise. You can't go out until after you've wrestled. And there isn't this sort of like, in this country, I almost feel like the line's being blurred a little bit. That's not always a bad thing, but there has to be some kind of mystery and some kind of mystique behind stuff, you know. And I think that in Japan, the audience and the wrestlers, they don't mix like they do in this country. But, you know, obviously outside of the ring, you can all be friends, but when you're wrestling, there needs to be that divide, you know.
The internet as well, though, on it.
It is, yeah, it is.
The internet, man.
I think like online reviews are great. You know, wrestling fans reviews is great. Obviously, it's a big help for our business. But sometimes I think promoters and other wrestlers take it a bit too literally. and they really get worked up over bad reviews from people. But I'm not knocking the guys that review it. They can do whatever they want. But a lot of the times they haven't actually been in a wrestling ring. You know, they haven't wrestled. They don't know what it's like to wrestle. So it's very difficult to judge it from a technical standpoint. You can say if you enjoy something, obviously. I can watch a film and say I didn't like that film. But if I start trying to critique all the acting, well, I'm not a Hollywood actor. So, like, how do I know what it's like to do these acting, you know?
That's cool. Do you get, I suppose the next one I'm going to ask is, I asked this to all the guys, different answers actually. Do you catch much of the current product on television now on the internet, or do you kind of veer away from watching it because you're immersed in it yourself?
I do watch some WWE stuff. I get a bit put off by it sometimes, like that eye for an eye match and stuff. It's not for me. It's just getting a bit silly. You know, I did watch the Swamp match with Bray Wyatt and Strowman, and I tried watching it. I put it on, and my fiance walked in. She went, "What is this rubbish you're watching?" You know, and I think it is a little bit. You know, it's not for me. I know they've got to do something. I know it's a hard time and the pandemic and everything, but there's sort of like insulting intelligence a little bit at times, which I think they were doing in that match. I watch AEW. I do watch a lot of that because it's on ITV, so it's perfect. I just watch it in the morning on a Saturday. There's things there that maybe I don't particularly enjoy, but there's some really good stuff there too. Some great wrestling.
What's your thoughts on? Obviously, they really push the tag division. I know they've got to showcase everyone, and they do it a bit different, don't they, production wise? What are your feelings with the tag division there in AEW, Joel?
I think FTR are a different level. I think they're unbelievable. That match with SCU recently on Dynamite, it was absolutely unbelievable match. You know, just so good. So I almost watch the shows just to watch their match. You know, if I know they're going to be on, I'm so intrigued to see what they're going to do with people. There's some tag matches there that I watch that I don't like. You know, they're doing a bit too much, I think, sometimes, and it's a bit silly, some of the moves they're doing. But I think their FTR is absolutely unbelievable tag team. They really understand how to do the job properly, and they're a joy to watch, I think.
So much back and forth as well with them leaving WWE, wasn't there? I thought, it's just a storyline, but it went and happened, didn't it? They jumped ship. They obviously weren't happy.
It's perfect, right? They just want to be the best, I think, and if they can get more opportunities in a different company, they're going to go there. They just want to show people what tag wrestling should be.
That's it, man. That's it. What about in a singles capacity then on AEW? Any guys that stand out for you there you enjoy?
I think MJF's good. You know, I like he's a good villain. Adam Page, good wrestler. I enjoy watching his stuff.
And I wanted you to say that.
I think he's real good. Obviously, Pac. You know, Pac's a league of his own. So when he is on those shows, obviously he's not been on for a while. But when he is on those shows, he's just always a standout match to me. He's just a different league to everybody else.
I'm with you.
That's what I think of. People like Jericho, Chris Jericho, still obviously puts a good match together. So from a wrestling standpoint, you can watch that and learn a lot from how he's putting his matches together. That's always pretty good.
I think 2 hours is the perfect time frame. You know, that 2 hour slot is enough. Raw. Yeah. I mean, Raw's been going 3 hours for 8 years now, hasn't it? But I think they've got the perfect amount of time there to showcase everyone.
100%, yeah. Yeah. Too much longer, it would get boring. It's just perfect. We haven't always got 3 hours of our time to give up to watch wrestling, you know. Like 2 hours is just about right.
I was going to ask. Obviously, the world's his oyster in terms of MJF. Could you see him in WWE in years to come?
Well, I think maybe AEW is going to keep getting stronger once the crowds come back. And I don't know his relationship with the guys there. I mean, maybe he might be very loyal to that company and just want to see them do well. I think hopefully they're going to be really successful because, if we look back at sort of 97, 98 and how good the wrestling was back then, when you had the sort of Monday Night Wars, it'd be great to get it back to that sort of level. I think WWE is better when they got competition. So let's hope that AEW can get even stronger and give them some real competition and make them set their game up a little bit.
I was going to ask you, just to go back, I'm going back over WWE here, like I should have kept it in the same compartment, but what are your thoughts on Aleister Black and how he's been booked recently?
I've not seen a lot not seen a lot of his stuff. I must have missed a lot of that stuff. I know him from the Independents, so he's a real nice guy and a good wrestler. But I've not seen a lot of his stuff.
Oh, okay. So that's all right.
I only watch pay-per-views, and only sometimes I watch pay-per-views. I like what Drew's been doing. That's obviously really good for us as European wrestlers to see him being so successful. That's a real nice thing. I just wish that there'd been a crowd there at WrestleMania. That's a shame we had to win the belt with no audience there, but it's one of those things.
How about women's wrestling, Joel? How do you find the women and what they're doing? Obviously, they're on a pedestal, on a higher pedestal these days, and rightly so. What are your thoughts with the rosters in AEW and WWE as it pertains to women?
Yeah, I don't pay a lot of attention to women's wrestling, to be honest. I do watch wrestling to try and learn stuff from it, to try and to steal something that they're doing. And I don't know. I never pay much attention to women's wrestling. But not that I dislike it. I just never been very invested in it. But it's obviously really good that they're giving them good opportunities and giving them a good platform to wrestle. It's excellent.
Just obviously pre-COVID, I'm just going to go back to you now. Pre-COVID, did you have a lot of bookings?
I did 52 matches pre-COVID, and that was all in England, so I didn't get out to Japan in those months. But that, 2.5 months and 52 matches. But then, I wrestled for All Star, and I don't wrestle too much on the internet. I probably did like 2 matches because most of the shows I do never get any kind of internet publicity. But I'm always busy, really wrestling. I do quite a lot, and I work. I have a real job too, so I have to balance both together.
How is your day-to-day job at the moment with all the constraints and restrictions and things like that? How are you finding it?
Yeah, well, the gym's starting to reopen now. So mine is next week, so I'll get back into the gym, back into some training, some people, which will be really good. But it's just been a challenging time for us all. But there's nothing you can do about it, so there's no point in complaining. Just got to get on with it and hope it gets back to normal.
They're still waiting, just in regards to gyms. Wales is still not open. Yeah. There's a lot of disgruntled people locally. I know a few lads. They're going absolutely nuts about it. But
yeah, I bet they are. Well, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. There's no point in complaining. You can't change it. It's just got to get on with it. I was doing a lot of workouts in the shed here, and it's difficult, especially when you've not got any shows. When you've got wrestling shows, you've got something to train for. You just think, okay, I've got this big match coming up in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to train really hard and get in good shape for this. But without any shows, like, geez, what am I doing this for? Because I don't take my top off in public. I don't do it to pick up girls or anything. I've done the gym because of wrestling, because I want to be a good wrestler. It's the only reason I go to the gym. So to not have any shows is quite challenging to get motivated. But then I also think, well, in my opinion, I spoke to Haskins the other day about this. Give me 2 seconds.
It's all right, mate. It's okay.
You've got this sort of this time, this gap for the lockdown, and I think a lot of wrestlers are going to slack off from training. They're not going to bother training, and they're going to sort of get behind. So this is my time to jump over them. If you've got this 4 months where no one's going to the gym, they're not training. Well, if I can still train for 4 months, I can sort of jump a few people and make some really big improvements. There was a time in NXT where we used to train at John Cena's gym, and then the trainer there had a falling out with the office, and they stopped training at Hard Knock South, and they stopped training there. And there was 3 months where we didn't have a gym to go to. We had our own LA Fitness and stuff that we go and train at, but it wasn't a strength gym. And in that time, there's a lot of people that got out of shape. They just didn't bother. When they weren't told to go, they just didn't bother. And I still went to the gym regularly, and that sort of helped me get an advantage on a lot of people during that 3 months.
Why do people have that mindset when they've got a role there? Why don't they do it in your opinion? Just laziness.
I started training at 16 in the gym. It's what I do. I do it also just to feel good. It's just my routine. It's what I've always done. So I couldn't imagine not training. But I guess some of them just never really bothered training until they got there and felt they were forced into doing these weight training sessions. So for them, it was like a nice little break. But I don't want to break. I want to keep training.
I'm going to close out now. I got a question personable to you. Favorite matches, if you've got any, just to close out.
Of mine or of what I've seen?
So, yeah, yours, and then ones that you saw when you were younger that, really captivated you.
Of mine would be against that Nomura in All Japan last year in Champions Carnival. And then matches that I've seen WWE-wise, trying to think what would be some of the Benoit Angle at the Royal Rumble. That would be the one probably that I really remember being my favourite when I was younger. It was an amazing match. And then now I watch a lot of British stuff. I watch old British wrestling. That's my thing. I really enjoy that. So anything with Steve Wright in it, I'm a big Steve Wright fan, or Steve Gray as well. I watch a lot of Steve Gray, John Cortez, a lot of these old British wrestlers that I really enjoy watching. So I guess that. But yeah, sort of American-wise, it would be Angle and Benoit from the Rumble. That's a match that really stands out to me.
That's cool. I was watching off WrestleMania 2000 about a month ago now. It was the freeway, Angle, Jericho and Benoit.
Oh yeah, the two belts.
European and the IC. Yeah, I hadn't watched it for years. So I'm going to put it. I loved it. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, really good.
Very good. Very well done. Right, Joel Redman, please plug your social media for the listeners and viewers, please, just to close out.
Twitter is at Joel Redman Pro, and Instagram is j.redman87. I'm probably the worst person you'll ever find on social media, so don't expect anything interesting. It's just absolutely dreadful. I need to get better at it. I really need to, but I really struggle with a lot of the pictures and filming what I do in the daytime. I kind of think that's my own life, but that is my stuff to follow if you want to. But I'm going to apologise now to anyone that does, and it's not very interesting.
Joel Redman, and you would have known him as Oliver Gray in NXT. Thank you very much. Cheers, man, for coming on. Really appreciate
your time.
I know you're busy. I know you're busy doing stuff. So anytime you can spare, just great for us and the fans. So cheers, man. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Today's episode is brought to you in association with Powered 4 TV, so go and check them out for anything wrestling related, old events, new events when we come out of COVID, podcasts, you name it, it's all there at Powered 4 TV, so find them across social media. And a big thank you to Richard and John for looking after me too.